Bridging Bonds, the Greek American Dialogue podcast series produced by Rebecca Pedi, Associate Professor of International Relations at the University of Macedonia, an IVLP Impact Awarded podcast series.
Welcome to a new episode of a Greek American Dialogue series titled Building Bridges, the Role of the Greek Diaspora in Greek American Relations. Today, we'll explore the profound impact of the Greek diaspora on fostering strong ties between Greece and the United States. I'm delighted to be joined by Endy Zemenides, the Executive Director of the Hellenic American Leadership Council. Endy is a leading voice for the Greek diaspora in the United States, working tirelessly to strengthen the Greek-American relations and promote the interests of Greece and Cyprus in Washington and vice versa. Endy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for hosting me.
You are the best relations ever expert in my mind. So let's dive into our discussion. And how did we get here, actually? Over the past few years, the relationship between Greece and the United States has been described as reaching its best ever status. What key factors and developments do you think have driven this remarkable transformation?
So above all else, because this is consistent with Greek history, I remember writing a piece at the beginning of the Greek economic crisis saying, because it also happened to be the 100th anniversary of Odysseus Elitis' birth. And I said, Greek history is like the Action Esti. You have the pathos, the passion, followed by the doxologia or the gloria. And you see it over and over again. After Thermopylae, you had Salamis, after, so on and so forth. And after every dark period, after every dark ages, there was some sort of a renaissance. So there's no question to me that the starting point of this new phase was the depths of the economic crisis. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of scholarship on this. There's a wonderful book, and Greek journalists have done a lot on this. But at a time where there was this rift between Greece and what was its closest Western partner, which is the European Union, and it was a horrible rift, the United States stepped up. The United States and Greece at that point in the mid-2000s, obviously they were allies, but it wasn't, Greece's Western orientation was far more towards Brussels and Berlin. I think that it was two figures in particular we have to remember in history, and I don't think it was insignificant that Jack Lew was the Treasury Secretary at this time, because his previous position was Chief of Staff of the White House. And I don't think another Treasury Secretary could have done for Greece what Jack Lew did. Not that the U.S. bailed Greece out, but the U.S. decided we're not going to let Greece messily crash out. We're not going to allow for the forced expulsion from the euro or the Grexit. The United States, the Obama administration, decided that would be a geopolitical catastrophe. And with Jack Lew holding that position, if Jack Lew picked up a call and told the president or Vice President Biden, who he did tell a lot, hey, clear this with Merkel or get the EU to, it happened. And I think that saved us from the worst case scenario, which was the Grexit. The other important thing that the Obama administration did was send Geoffrey Pyatt in its last 2 years. And we all know, I don't think we have to belabor the point, but first of all, sending someone from an A-level post, which today you can argue that the United States' most important non-political post is the ambassador of Ukraine. All right. So typically at that point, you would have figured the reverse. You would have figured somebody maybe would have graduated from Greece to go to Ukraine. To do it in the reverse was particularly important. And so Pyatt came in with a lot of diplomatic and political clout and a lot of experience. When we're thinking of things like the strategic dialogue, we take the strategic dialogue for granted, and we don't realize that, especially when it was established in Greece, it wasn't something that was given out like candy. Sure, there are a lot with Europe, but this also came from Geoff Pyatt's experience when he was at the embassy in India and established a strategic dialogue there. So the crisis by itself was a great starting point. The second most important factor, I believe, was Congress and leadership. American policy changes through political leadership. There are no long-term trends. There's not yes, we're famous for putting all together these national security strategies, but they can change with every president. They do change with every president. But when you have a really strong congressional leadership, and ironically enough, it tracked the same period as the Greek and Cypriot economic crises. It was at that moment that Congress started stepping up. It was in 2012 that the Congressional Hellenic Israel Alliance was formed. It was a couple years later that Bob Menendez got his first term as Senate Foreign Relations chairman. It was only shortly after that Bob Menendez and Marco Rubio in the Senate, and then Ted Deutsch, Gus Bilirakis, and David Cicilline did the East Med Act. I mean, think about this relationship. When we're talking about best ever, this relationship has been very strong since Harry Truman, with dips, but the fundamentals have been there. And it never had, in the lifetime of our parents, of our grandparents, there was never any major legislative expression of how strong this relationship was. The Marshall Plan was not just for Greece. The Truman Doctrine was not just for Greece. But all of a sudden, in the space of 2 years, we're talking about 70 years, no real legislation. And in the space of 2 years, you got two major pieces of framework legislation: the Eastern Mediterranean Security and Energy Partnership Act and the U.S. Greece Defense and Interparliamentary Partnership Act. So I think that was major. The congressional relationship was absolutely major factor. Third, related to the congressional relationship, is the partnerships and the friends, the revival of Philhellenism here. And it's not a Philhellenism at the popular level like we saw in the 1800s, but at the civic group level. When those pieces of legislations have the imprimatur and the endorsement of the American Jewish Committee, of the Christians United for Israel, of think tanks like FDD, of scholars from the Council on Foreign Relations and AEI and all the rest, that made them greater than just this narrow ethnic group. And I think that's the difference. That was a difference in the diaspora's approach. It was not merely a Greek ethnic issue. It was something much larger. And then finally, not insignificantly, I mean, you could rank this first. It's tied to every piece of this process. It mattered who the leaders were in Greece and in Cyprus. People really don't give enough credit to, for example, in the last 4 years, having a prime minister of Greece who can be on Fareed Zakaria, who can be on Bloomberg, who you can sell and use his own voice to explain to Americans, and to, at least in his first 4 years, to have an ambassador, now the deputy foreign minister, who, because of her relationship with him, you knew that, and an American, I'm not talking about you as the Greek American community, but American interlocutors knew that when Alexandra Papadopoulou was saying something, she was reflecting exactly what the prime minister was saying. And his whole team, I can't tell you in that first term how impactful it was in Washington to have Nikos Zemenides and then Nikos Papadopoulou coming to Washington, D.C., having Dimitris Keridis, Adonis Georgiadis, and having flawless communications in English. That was almost like revolutionary. The same thing with Cyprus, starting with the Anastasiadis government. And I will point out especially the role of now President Christodoulides, because he is the one figure in this whole era from 2013, which I think started the upward trend, to today. He's the one person who is around for the whole thing. He started as chief of staff to Christodoulides, then diplomatic advisor to the president, government spokesman, foreign minister, and now president. So being able to have people who express and establish relationships in the United States. I will tell you that Prime Minister Mitsotakis and President Christodoulides have probably spoken to more members of Congress and built more relationships in Congress than all of their predecessors combined. That's not a small thing. And when we take the gold standard, which is the Prime Minister of Israel, who probably knows personally and has on speed dial hundreds of members of Congress. I mean, we're not reaching that level, but that type of relationship building is more important than ever.
This is quite new and quite impressive in Greek-American relationship history, I think. But apart from the personalities who played obviously an important role, what about regional developments and U.S. regional interests?
Yeah, the regional. So obviously, Greece is in a difficult neighborhood, and Cyprus is in a difficult neighborhood, and the difficulties got even worse when you had people, and I'll point to analyses by President Trump's first Assistant Secretary of State for Europe, Wes Mitchell, which I highly recommend his previous book, Unquiet Frontiers. Greece and Cyprus occupy the strategic seam, and you look at it, even in the bureaucracy of the United States. You think about Greece and Cyprus belong to the Bureau of Europe, but a lot of the tensions or fault lines that affect Greece and Cyprus are in the Middle East, or they are in Africa. So there were times where you would see in the bureaucratic structure, you would see Greece being on an agenda at the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the other agenda item maybe being Finland and Norway, and Israel the next day being on an agenda item in MENA, and Tunisia being the other, right? There was at some point no bureaucratic setup for the Eastern Mediterranean, because the Eastern Mediterranean is both Europe and Middle East. And I could say, and North Africa and the Horn of Africa, and there's a greater Eastern Mediterranean. So at the time that these best ever relations were going up, when we discussed the factors for that already, you also started seeing the formation of the Eastern Mediterranean as a distinct political and economic and geostrategic entity. There had not been that before. There was nothing I mean, we're talking about from 2015 to 2020, we went from nobody even uttering Eastern Mediterranean, or at least not on a consistent basis, to an Eastern Mediterranean strategy starting under West Mitchell, legislation called the East Med Act, Eastern Mediterranean sub-projects happening at multiple think tanks. The Eastern Mediterranean is now like a permanent part of the geostrategic conversation. And that's because we've had in the greater Eastern Mediterranean, I would argue, and CSIS once did a map that says, and I fully agree, the greater Eastern Mediterranean could extend all the way to the Black Sea and all the way down to the Red Sea. Now with IMEC, I would actually say it could go as far east as New Delhi. And when you look at that Eastern Mediterranean establishing, and you go all the way, you go, let's say, Libya to the west, the geographic center of that Eastern Mediterranean is Greece and Cyprus. And with all these changes, with the reliability of Greece and Cyprus also having gone up, right? And maybe I should have added a fifth factor in why it's the best relations ever, because Greece and Cyprus exceeded all expectations. And why I would say this is way better, you cannot really compare. It would be unfair to compare this to the Truman years, because Greece, especially during the Truman years, was almost in the point of being a supplicant. The U.S. was doing for Greece, right? Now Greece and Cyprus are real partners and allies in this world as it's being shaped. So there was turmoil in this period on the north side of the Eastern Mediterranean and on the south side, and Greece and Cyprus really presented stability enhancers, or as President Christodoulides likes to say, Cyprus was not just a problem, it presents a solution too.
They can both create some value for the United States.
They do. It's not they can. They do. They have. I mean, if you think about the role, I would point to Mike Pompeo's last trip to Greece as Secretary of State. He did not go to Athens. The Secretary of State did not go to Athens. He went to Thessaloniki, Alexandroupolis, and Souda. That shows that the U.S. saw the northern value of Greece and the southern value of Greece. And in that strategic scene, how can you link all the way from Ukraine to Israel, which is as important today as it was 5 years ago, because those are the two major flashpoints.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about these practical consequences of this new status for both the Greek and American people. We celebrate this new status a lot, but what it does mean in practice for both the United States and Greece and Cyprus?
Well, for the Greek people, the increased attention on by the United States, because again, let's rewind 10 years ago and remember the headlines here. We were a punchline. Unfortunately, we see how much of a punchline we were, where there were some unfortunate remarks by the President Trump's designee for U.S. ambassador now. And now you fast forward and see this relationship has also come with quite a bit of reputation enhancement of Greece within the United States. So as a result, you have, even when times were good in Greece, in the early part of this millennium, who was anticipating Pfizer and Microsoft and Oracle and JP Morgan to be doing market-leading investments in Greece? Tourism,
especially in northern Greece.
In northern Greece especially, who was looking at Greece, 20 years ago and thinking that it was going to be an energy hub and a climate change innovator? Tourism was always big in Greece, but those of us Americans who would come to Greece, you saw it as this place for quaint bed and breakfasts, small. And now you're sitting there saying, man, even for resort experiences, Greece is better than anywhere else. I don't think people imagine the Costa Navarinos of the world, the Four Seasons, and all of this that have popped up in Greece. So the investment alone is a huge boon to Greece. Things like the visa waiver program, we forget that when this crisis was breaking out, that was not a sure thing either. And now the people-to-people contacts are huge. Even little, and people don't give weight to such innovations. But I remember when I was a student in Greece in '95, if you wanted the English language news in Greece, you were getting, I think the newspaper was called the Athens News, right? That was it. Right. Now that Kathimerini has a robust English language edition, that even Tovima has started and others have started this English language, have brought the nations closer, and there will be spillover effect over and over again. The reception of Greek goods in the American market, Greek wines, are not just Retsina, and I can blame some Greek Americans for that too. The revolution in Greek cuisine is starting to be reflected in Greek restaurants here, Faye, and frankly, now that's kind of at the lower level, but now you're going to start seeing whether it's Greek startups or Greek defense manufacturers being welcomed at a higher level in the United States, because Greece now, in the last 10 years, is being associated with quality rather than with jokes.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little about the diaspora's role in all this. The Greek American diaspora has long been bridge between the two nations. But how do you see the role of diaspora in shaping and sustaining the efforts that have led to this closer partnership, let's say? And are there any specific milestones or initiatives you would highlight?
Well, listen, on the political front, clearly stuff like, and I can speak from our own personal experience as HALC, you see things like the Congressional Hellenic Israel Alliance Caucus, which we partnered with the American Jewish Committee, as well as the East Med Act and the U.S. Greece Act. These were examples of the diaspora using the skills and knowledge that it had to bring certain issues to the forefront, and actually to do something that it wasn't Greece and Cyprus doing, redefining what the ethnic issues were, or the ethnica themata is regional and not purely Greek and Cypriot thing. So the diaspora during the crisis did a lot. Several groups bringing their economic power to the fore to help. You see the Hellenic Initiative helping Greek startups. You saw a lot of humanitarian or charitable aid at the depths of the economic crisis. I think the diaspora is still an underutilized partner for Greece for a few reasons. One, I don't think Greece has fully understood the diaspora as a partner rather than as an asset. And I think there are certain circles in Greece that see the diaspora primarily through the diaspora vote lens, which I think is incorrect. I also think that while this government has been much better than its predecessors on it, people are still stuck in dealing with the diaspora. And they want to deal with the diaspora in this kind of hub and spoke system, right? We'll deal with one institution or a handful of institutions, and then they can deal with everybody else. The diaspora is not as unified as Greece would like it to be, and not because of political divisions just because this is a big country. This is a big country. This is a continent. And this is a diaspora that has been here for many generations, and even the generational aspect is not unified. And I also think the previous approach of like treating or trying to manage diaspora relations through the church has probably run its course, because the church is different, and the church is in many ways, and in some places, definitely in some places in America, it's probably more of a Phil-Hellenic institution than it is a Hellenic institution. The church has its own existential challenges. When you look at the number of mixed marriages and all the rest, for the church to survive and thrive in America, it's hard to look at it and say that's Greece's number one partner for a Hellenic diaspora. And I don't think there is a number one partner, or can there be a number one partner? I take my group. We don't speak for the diaspora. When I speak, I reflect the membership of HALC. I'm not trying to reflect. I'll study what other demographics within diaspora will do, but I don't speak for them, and I don't think there's a way to do it. And when I look at the strategy right now for the diaspora strategy for Greece, it seems like they want it to be simpler. They want it to be easier. They want to be able in a more easy. No, you got to commit to the hard thing, because there is the secret is there's not one diaspora. There are those who are still immigrants. That's the fastest slowing group. There's the children of immigrants like myself. There are people who identify themselves as diaspora primarily through the church, and we've talked about how difficult that may be. There are people who remember that their grandparents were immigrants, but they don't, or maybe their great-grandparents, but they don't have those direct ties. And then there's people who just have Greek last names. Now, you probably have to have 3 or 4 strategies to deal with all those. But there are unbelievable opportunities in terms of partnering with the diaspora, because you are now at the point that the diaspora is fully part of American society. It's not one foot in each world. They didn't get educated in Greece and come here. They are at the top of the corporate world rather than just being successful entrepreneurs. And if Greece figures out how to really partner in this way and to listen, right? I would say the number one thing that should have been done in this diaspora tour is a listening tour, like some great political campaigns do. Don't just present this strategy that I have a sneaking suspicion that it was in part drafted by ChatGPT. But I don't know how they did that strategy, and its first release was only in Greek. Right. That, I've had this discussion with Greek officials. Okay, I can read Greek. I can speak Greek, but more than 50% of my Cypriotes in the Greek diaspora in America cannot. So what real input did you get? What listening did you do? And what I'm worried is that Greece is really not identifying the full potential of how we can partner with this diaspora.
Can you be a little bit more specific? What do you think needs to change or be improved to better engage with the diaspora, to maximize diaspora's potential?
I would propose just simply, first of all, I think you need, increasing the Greek diplomatic presence all over the United States, and especially in the consulates. The consulates right now, you can see that they're barely keeping up with the requests for people to establish Greek citizenship, right? And that's great. I applaud that part of the delivery of services is getting better, even though there's so many people are taking advantage of that there's wait lines forever in certain consulates. Right, I have people telling me that they're waiting for months, even for an appointment in New York. Right, so you clearly need even to just keep up with with the successful parts of your strategy right now, which is the delivery of services, you need more personnel. But you're also not doing, you have, I've seen this, the Greek diplomats at the consulates do not have the time to go find the people who could be part of this, who could actively be part of this, the diaspora, and they're not. And they just don't have the time to do it. So you can't create more time. There's only 24 hours in the day, and they do enough events and they have to sleep. So the only way you're going to create more hours in the day is by sending more people. I also think there has to be a greater effort to get Greek Americans to come and do foreign study or some type of study in Greece. I am a product of said foreign study. There are hundreds of professors in the United States. If you look at a lot of the professors at universities that do a lot for Greece, they are also products of foreign study in Greece. Lieutenant Governor Hellenic American Leadership is a product of foreign study from Greece. But at a time where, just take the marketing principle of go where people are. When I did foreign study in Greece, or when Eleni did foreign study in Greece, it was still an exotic thing to do foreign study. Right now, it's a standard. It's a standard part of the American college experience. And the fact that there are Greek American students going and doing foreign study elsewhere because they say, I go to Greece every summer. No, you don't. You don't. If you're just in Greece from June to August, you're not really in Greece. You're not really getting that Greek experience. So I've encouraged people, and they've told me it was the best decision they ever made. I said, do your vacation in Italy. Instead of doing foreign study in Italy and vacation in Greece, do your foreign study in Greece and vacation in Italy. And they tell me that was the best decision of their life. There's not a lot of silver bullets, but if we can just, I'm on the board of College Year in Athens. And I know, at least from our stats, that less than 10% of the students who come to Greece right now for foreign study are of Greek descent. If we just say every 5 years we want to double that number, right, we will revolutionize the U.S. Greece relationship. This is not let's do it by reducing the number of non-Greeks who are coming. I'm saying just increase the number of Greeks. Don't make, for the Greek American community, if Greece becomes just the Greece of summer for the Greek American community, irreparable harm will be done to the relationship between Greece and its diaspora.
And sometimes there are really small steps we need to take in order to achieve tangible results. But let's go back to the milestones we discussed before. And I know that the Hellenic American Leadership Council played a pivotal role in the East Med Act. And I'm wondering, with the new administration and Senator Marco Rubio, a key advocate of this act, taking the role of Secretary of State, how do you see the East Med Act evolving? What is its significance today, especially in light of the ongoing upheaval in the Middle East?
When the East Med Act was passed, it was about giving the administration, and again, it was passed during the Trump administration. It was about providing and formalizing and institutionalizing certain tools for an American administration to be able to be used in this emerging region of the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, at that point, we had gone from the tumult of the Arab Spring, which became an Islamic winter, to kind of a period of collaboration and peace, right? You had the Abraham Accords, you had the 3+1, you had the Eastern Mediterranean gas flow. Now, since October 7th of 2023, all of this progress has been frozen. But we've seen, and I've written about this recently in Kathimerini, it is, ironically, the ball is coming back. It's kind of coming full circle back to the Trump administration to be able to kick off once again these peacemaking and collaboration institutions. Hezbollah and Hamas have been dismembered. Iran is on its back foot. Assad is gone. The states that were behind the Abraham Accords and the East Med Gas Forum, they are ascendant. There's going to be a post-October 7th regional order, and the East Med Act is part of the foundations for that regional order. Of course, the East Med Act pointed out malign actors in the area, and those malign actors still remain. Now, Iran may be neutered. China is still there. And, Marco Rubio was in favor of the East Med Act in part because he saw it as a way to check China in the region. Russia's presence is diminished, but it can still be a troublemaker. It still has a presence in Tartus. And the biggest malign actor actually is on a win streak in Turkey, because it's definitely one of the winners in the situation in Syria. I wrote a paper years ago about natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean and describing the institutions that were being built around that and comparing them to the early European institutions, saying just like coal and steel gave the energy for the EU to come up, natural gas was going to provide the energy in a figurative sense to bring the Eastern Mediterranean together. The big difference is that when the European steel and coal community came up, you had the Germany of the 1950s. In the Eastern Mediterranean, Turkey is at best Germany of World War I, and at some times you would have to wonder whether it's Nazi Germany. And this is the real challenge. But the Eastern Mediterranean, the East Med Act, and its successor, which is really it's the East Med Act too, but it was because it was during the bicentennial, they called it the U.S. Greece Defense and Interparliamentary Partnership Act. They give this administration, and Marco Rubio was co-sponsor of each, a lot more tools to help build the new regional order post-October 7th.
Challenging times, and I'm wondering what's next for the Hellenic American Leadership Council. You have been instrumental in promoting Greece and Cyprus positions in the United States. What's on the horizon for the Greek Hellenic American Leadership Council in terms of...
So I actually think that where we've been instrumental is building these ties. Because there will be people who will tell you we're promoting American interests in Athens and Nicosia, which is true. We're Americans. We believe that, especially at the bicentennial, it goes back to what I said about Philhellenism. The relationship, when the relationship is strong, when America and Greece and America and Cyprus stand together, it is better not only for the states, but for the people, and it's better for the regions. And that's what we want to keep promoting. We want this best ever relationship has really occurred mostly at the government-to-government level. We're starting to see the business-to-government level. We want to make sure it goes to business-to-business level. We would like to encourage greater investment going in both directions. And the people-to-people level, we still think that is an underutilized asset, that and most of that people-to-people contact comes through tourism. We think there's more. It can come through culture. It can come, as we've seen, as we've talked about, it can come in relationships between journalists, in relationships between scholars, in relationships between students, and in relationships. And we're trying to create in the next generation. So we're young professionals who are just coming out of student, just starting their career. We are presently creating, let's call it, for lack of a better word, pen pals. that young Greek professionals and young American professionals are educating each other about their country, building ties that may stick. That like when a Greek from Chicago visits Athens, they have a new friend. Those, just like relationships matter in politics, I think relationships particularly matter in people-to-people ties. And because we've gotten so further away from the immigrant generation, we have to create something that replaces the old family ties that may not exist anymore between Greek Americans and Greece. So professional and, other friendship ties, that's going to be a priority of ours. And of course, we continue the policy progress and political progress and build on it. There will be new issues, and we have to be prepared. And all of this to try to do it in a sustainable manner. We, as HALC, we aim to grow younger because that's the only way that the bridge building role will last as long as the bilateral relationship. Because the worst thing, and we've seen this with other diaspora groups. I've told, going back to Greece's diaspora strategy, I'm sure this wasn't done by the Italians on purpose, but Italy's diaspora is not necessarily a force multiplier for Italy or a real bridge between Rome and Washington anymore. The Italians used to be the prime force in the Catholic Church in America. That's not the case anymore. The language is not spoken. I have a lot of Italian friends. They don't know the foreign policy challenges that Italy, or even the domestic policy challenges. It's cuisine and history, and unfortunately, some of Italians in some Americans' eyes are defined more by shows like The Sopranos or movies like The Godfather than they are by Rome. And that's an unbelievable shame. And that's what we have to make sure we're just not our generation or the next generation is not just the My Big Fat Greek Wedding generation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
for such an engaging and insightful discussion. It's clear that the Greek diaspora plays an invaluable role, especially the Hellenic American Leadership Council, in strengthening Greek-American relations, from advocating for policy changes to fostering deeper cultural, as you said, ties. And as we look ahead, your reflections on the challenges and opportunities in this evolving relationship provide much food for thought. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey to explore the vital connections between Greece and the United States. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we will continue to delve into the issues shaping Greek-American relations and the broader transatlantic partnership. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.